All right. Welcome, everybody. Happy Memorial Day weekend. It is a very special weekend as we remember those who have given the ultimate sacrifice and have died in the line of duty, protecting our unalienable rights and protecting this amazing country that we love and call home. So thank you for joining us on the live stream here. We were not with you last week, but we're back. We're very excited for the panel we have in the discussion today. Pretty exciting developments that are starting to happen that we've been working towards since the beginning of the year. And we're encouraged by that, but a lot of work to do. So let's get right to it. We're going to start as we always do, inviting God to be a part of this, as we are one nation under God, and we believe in that truly, and we take it seriously. So let's bow our heads. Father God, we ask God for your presence today, for your Holy Spirit to fill us, that you would put the words in our mouths, that you would direct our thoughts, and that you would give us wisdom, as well as comfort and strength. We thank you for the Memorial Day celebration to remember those who have laid their lives down. God, you said there is no greater love than when a man lays his life down for his brethren, for his friends. You gave us that example, and many of our Americans have followed that example. We honor them. We know that's why this country is so great and why it's worth fighting for. We thank you that you've allowed us to be a part of that fight. And we just ask for your continued mercy, blessing, and leadership on the We Are J6 project as we pursue restorative justice for those harmed and for the nation. We are so grateful for you, God, and for this country. And we pray all these things in Jesus' name. Amen. All right. So right off the top here, as you can see, we have this interesting headline here related to the Ashli Babbitt settlement, which is a really big deal. We're going to dig into why it's a big deal and what it means. But the reason I am showing this to you guys with the negative headline here sends a sickening message, Democrats say. And of course, you know, again, going back to the Bible, it tells us that dark will be light and bitter will be sweet. So when you see something like that, that it's a sickening message, the point is it's getting sweet. We're on the target here. So this is where we've always wanted to be going as a movement and as a platform with wearej6.com. But we'll have Dr. Gold weigh in on the implications of this. I mean, just off the top, it's obvious that the Trump administration and the DOJ, by doing this, by doing it at all, and certainly by doing it with the speed and clarity that they are doing it, sends a very strong message that they are taking J6 seriously, and they are looking to determine what truly happened and, you know, who the good guys and the bad guys are, and what needs to be taking place to repair this situation. So it's a very strong message on that note, and it has other implications. But Dr. Gold, go ahead and let us know your opinion of this settlement, including the number attached to it, and the negotiation aspect and how that affects the whole mission that we've always been on here at J6.
Thank you. I'm actually really glad that John started with the negative, because we all see the positive of them moving kind of rapidly and addressing this. But we have to understand that there's a pretty aggressive opponent on the other side, people who think false things about us and about the day. So one of the things that I think will be bandied about is like the number $5 million. And is that too much, you know, according to leftist Marxist? Is it too little? Because if you are somebody who loved Ashli Babbitt, it's far too little. But walking that line of a lawyer who I've been involved in legal cases in the past, I want to remind everybody that the amount of money that is attached to a death is not really the same as the amount of money attached to a person who's had a lot of harm. This is maybe counterintuitive, because we all know death is the worst thing that could happen from the, you know, human perspective of somebody who loves somebody. But comparing to medical malpractice, which I think is a very accurate comparison, because what we're really talking about is legal malpractice, right? We're really talking about the DOJ gone amok and doing things that they shouldn't have done.
Government malpractice, actually, but yes.
Government malpractice. Medical malpractice, it's well known that a settlement for somebody who's passed away due to a medical malpractice situation oftentimes is much lower than the amount that is given to a family that has a huge amount of expenses related to a disastrous medical fallout. So somebody, for example, who has 10 years of medical expenses in front of them because of a malpractice error will often get, or typically get, a higher amount because there's a lot of hard expenses associated with it, as well as emotional pain and suffering, right? Because like Ashli Babbitt's family had terrible pain and suffering, that's the category. But there's also actual harms that happened that didn't, for example, happen to Ashli Babbitt. It's the emotional pain and suffering. So I just want people not to run too hard in either direction. The leftists are going to, the haters obviously hate seeing this. You can see the headline. But later on, as we get further into the negotiations, they're going to want to present that the maximum amount for any person is $5 million. And I would stand here and tell you that's completely false from a legal settlement perspective, completely false. There are huge damages associated with people who've lost their house, they've gone bankrupt, they've been tremendously traumatized. Some people have to be hospitalized. Some people kill themselves. People lost benefits, which caused, their life to tailspin down. I just don't want people to get sucked into a false comparison of Ashli Babbitt's situation and anybody else's situation. That's really just what I wanted to say about the number, because I know there's going to be a lot of talk about the number going forward. Thank
Amazing.
you.
And before we continue, I want to play some clips from Ed Martin, because as we said, the precedent set by this Ashli Babbitt settlement indicates that the DOJ is taking this seriously. They have the right approach and the right mindset as to what went wrong with J6 and what the harms are. But we were, of course, very strong supporting Ed Martin to be confirmed as U.S. Attorney in D.C. Senator Tom Tillis shamefully derailed that. He will be primaried and expelled from government if I have anything to do with it. But he outed himself. And President Trump, being the brilliant mastermind that he clearly is and continues to be, pulled the rug out from under them and put Ed Martin right where he needs to be to get a lot of stuff done. Listen to what Ed Martin says to Benny Johnson here. It's pretty clear.
People to get whole, and we should do it. We shouldn't be afraid. You want to pay J6ers? You're damn right I want to pay J6ers. If you got wronged by the government, then you should be made right. That's America.
There's a fund that's available for doing this, actually, when the DOJ goes and destroys someone's life and it's fraudulent prosecution, right?
That's not good enough.
There's always been that fund is for when you, and there's a process to sue for it and all. I'm saying it's got to be faster than that. It's got to be realer than that. And I'm not against that. I'm just saying you're right. There is this process, and we've got to do that too.
It's faster than that. It's realer than that. Do you see where this is going? This is very significant, what Ed Martin is saying. And he goes a little bit further here on this next clip, but I want you to listen really carefully to everything he says here, because Matt Gaetz asks him an excellent question, and Ed Martin gives a very thorough and thoughtful and significant answer.
Ask a question also about your other dual role as leader of the Department of Justice's Weaponization Working Group. It is the challenge there is you have so much jurisdiction, and there's almost, if you threw a rock in Washington, D.C., it would probably land in the parking lot of some federal agency that has been weaponized against at least someone in some manner. How are you going to go about triaging and prioritizing the very important work of the Weaponization Working Group that you lead?
Well, let me say something that sort of go counter to what I just told you about. As important as the pardon discussion is, and we'll get to the bottom of it, that's not, Matt, the process that has been the most abusive in terms of weaponization, right? We've seen the January 6th defendants be weaponized against. We've seen COVID be weaponized against victims, right? So we have an obligation in the Weaponization Working Group to follow the lead of the president. On day one, he said, I want you to make government not weaponized. Then we had Attorney General Bondi come in, and she gave us categories to look at that were very specific. The weaponization of the law by Jack Smith and by some of the prosecutors, and that's expanded to include lawfare against, say, the electors who were doing their duty under the Constitution and are still being prosecuted across the country, lawyers who are being prosecuted. So there's a category Attorney General Bondi said, look at these, including, by the way, school board parents of school board meetings where they were targeted, Catholics were targeted, whistleblowers. So Attorney General Bondi gave us some direction, but as you say, say, Matt, show me your priorities and I'll show you what you care about. We at the Weaponization Working Group have been spending the last 3 or 4 days, my first days on the job, developing those categories that we're going to focus on, and being able to drive through, as Deputy Attorney General is Todd Blanche, and he said it so well. Once you know where the problems are and you're digging into them, then you find where the solutions are, whether it's referring them out for prosecution, whether it's other kinds of actions that could be available, including civil actions. And, Matt, I'll say last, in summary, we have an obligation to show what's happened by investigation, hold people accountable by prosecution and other means, and we also have an obligation to heal the people that have been damaged. And, I got an earful from Senator Tillis saying, are you for reparations? And he wanted to talk all about that. What I'm for is when the government destroys someone and their life and their livelihood and their family, you're darn right they should be made whole. That's real equity, to get people back to where they were before they were weaponized against by the government. And we shouldn't be afraid of that. The left uses it to be dishonest and to bribe each other and to be corrupt. We should do it to be honorable and to help heal. And that's what everybody from Nelson Mandela back in the era when he and Desmond Tutu said we're going to reform ourselves. Everybody knows this is how you move forward, is identify who the wrongdoers were, hold them accountable the ways you can, and then heal the people that have been really hurt.
I mean, that's just incredible. There's a lot in there that we could unpack, but I think it's really clear where Ed Martin and the administration is going. I think it's really exciting, and it's very on point, I believe, with what we have been continuing to say and discuss on this live stream, and with the conversations we've had connecting people through wearejsix.com, to recognize that there is a process here. There's a political process, there's a legal process, but there's a direction and a momentum that lines up with, like Ed Martin said, show me our priorities and I'll show you what you care about. So Dr. Gold, we've talked about, and Steve, please jump in on this too, but we've talked about what's going on behind the scenes, what is going on in terms of what all of us can do as individuals, and what sorts of things we have been suggesting are necessary and important for people that are listening and participating in We Are J6 to be doing. Because Ed Martin is clearly doing his job. He's putting the work in, I can see, but we all have a part to play. So how can we be doing that?
I'm happy to just say a few words, Steve. Mine's super short. I say it most weeks and then let you run with it. I am so encouraged by how things are going, but it is our job, all of us. There's, I think, hundreds of J6ers that are listening, and there's thousands of other people that are interested in the subject. We need videos. Those videos are what is going to change the narrative. That's it, plain and simple. It is so important to get these individual stories out there. People in the media can use those stories. They will be used when there's an eventual negotiation to understand the range of harms that have been done to people. The big fight is not going to, in my opinion, is not going to be to have some kind of settlement, right? It's clear that that's where we're going. And I have a little more information that I can't talk about, but you all can see what is publicly being said. It's definitely going to happen. The question is convincing everyone that the range of harms is as big as we all know it was, and as deep and impactful as we know it was, and nothing does it better than the videos that we share with you each week. That's what everyone here can do. And I have more I could say, but let me just turn it back to Steve.
Excuse me. Right when you turned it over to me, I swallowed wrong. The idea of restorative justice is compelling to all of us that went through what we went through. Now, in my case, I don't need that. I'm one of the rare exceptions to the January 6th story, in that even though I bore the weight of the federal government, even though they did and were weaponized against me, even though they did put me in leg chains, I did not suffer financially. I didn't lose my home. I didn't lose my family. I didn't lose my job. I got a better job. My profile was elevated. It's why, you know, the silly people out there in the J6 community say that I'm a Fed because things got better for me.
Right.
You know, it's we all have our various skills, talents. You know, my particular set of skills allowed me to become a voice for what was happening with January 6th, particularly on the weaponization side. I was actually weaponized against the government by COVID. I had already begun the process. I just like Dr. Gold.
Yeah.
That was the beginning point for me to turn and aim my guns on the government itself. And then that particular set of skills advanced my profile. Whereas, as we know, we don't have to get into the stories here. So many others lost everything, or some variance of percentage of everything in the process. So many still can't get a job. You know, Ron, you are certainly an example of that situation. But the commonality that you and I have, Ron, is that the government did not prosecute us for what we did that day. They prosecuted for what we said. And that was the weaponization overall. That's correct, against free speech. And that is the message that I have tried to deliver to every single Congress member and senator that I've had the opportunity to get in front of. And if they're squishy on J6 issues like a Tom Tillis or others, and by the way, there's some people that we think that are not squishy just because of their rhetoric. Once they close the door and they say the things that are actually on their mind with their outside voice, they're just as squishy as everybody else. And I don't mind naming names any longer. We're done with holding that back.
Yeah.
But if we're talking about
time is over.
Right. If we're talking about Tom Tillis or we're talking about a Jim Jordan, there's one. Yeah. He's one of the biggest obstructionists to getting things through Congress in terms of January 6th related investigations. He has been since the GOP took over Congress in 2023 in January. He has been the largest, most aggressive obstructionist to January 6th investigations. He actually said, now this is not what he said in front of a microphone and in front of a camera, but in front of firsthand eyewitnesses that are sources of mine,
sure,
said that he said to them that he would never deal with any January 6th issues in his weaponization committee. Now, what he discovered was that was impossible, because every single committee hearing he had, every single witness had some intersection with January 6th. He couldn't keep it out. That's right. How important, that's how big January 6th is. It's how much it has permutated all aspects of the weaponization of our intelligence agencies, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Exactly. It's a flashpoint. Yeah.
Yeah. And so he couldn't avoid it. And I had the opportunity to get in his face for 10 minutes. And I said, with all due respect, sir, you apparently do not understand what's going on. Yeah. I said, what's going on is happening at that courthouse across the street from the Capitol, at the district courthouse, where we are seeing precedent set in trial after trial after trial against the First Amendment, not against. Look, we can all debate to whatever level we want to the culpability and to the punishment that the more violent offenders need to be held to, but even in their cases, in every case, their sentencing, the enhancements, the penalties that they received, the way that they were treated, were all in direct violation of their First Amendment rights. And every one of us had to deal with that. Every one of us sitting with our photos, our images up right now on this screen, have had to deal with the weaponization of the government against our speech. And I would not, even Ryan Riley of NBC News, on the day that I was arrested, he actually tweeted out, he said, if Steve Baker had not said what he said before he got to the campus and what he said after he left the campus, this charges would most surely not have been brought against him.
Also, Steve, I don't want us to lose sight of the actions that occurred as well as the speech. So that I don't know any more egregious example of government weaponization than a government that actively conspires to set up conditions to create a riot. They manufactured that riot. They created it out of non-riot. A riot would not have happened if the government didn't want it to happen and act to make it happen. I know that's true. I'm very confident in articulating it. I will never give that up. And I think that is massively important. I don't just say J6 is the American Reichstag fire because it's a cool phrase. That's
Right.
what it was. And I don't know how much more egregious weaponization gets than that. And that's not just words. That's conspiracy. That's planning. That's actions. That's violence. That is violations of established protocol. In Michael Bird's case, it was murder. But the point I'm making is that weaponization includes very, very problematic, destructive actions by the government, and they must be held accountable for that.
And we are going to prove that, by the way, John. We are going to prove that.
Good. It is.
I mean, that proof, I just will say, is in motion right now.
And tell me what your thoughts on this, Steve, because it seems to me that the implications of the Ashli Babbitt settlement leading into what we are confident will be a full settlement for J6ers, which of course our team is working on behind the scenes to structure that and make that successful. But we're going to land that plane somewhere, somehow, and there's going to be a settlement. And I think it's going to be very substantial. As Dr. Gold mentioned, there's legitimate precedent for this and a need for it. That's going to send a massive message to the entire world. When the government settles, that is implicitly an acknowledgement of their guilt. The government was guilty on January 6th. They were the criminal. And that settlement is going to solidify that to the point that no one can really deny it anymore. And when you have that worldwide acknowledgement that the government committed an egregious crime, well, then you can't exactly not investigate the crime and figure out exactly who and how it happened. So I think the settlement is going to ignite a lot more demand and make momentum that is inescapable to push forward these investigations that you are mentioning. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's very similar in an equal and opposite kind of way, matter, antimatter kind of way to the George Floyd settlement that was given to his family in Minneapolis. I actually went up there for the beginning of that trial. I was actually driving around the courthouse. It had double layers of concrete fencing, barbed wire, 2 layers around the entire courthouse with soldiers, state troopers, tactical units, SWAT teams, National Guard, all walking in between those middle rows to protect that courthouse at the beginning of that trial. While I was in downtown Minneapolis, driving the circuit around the courthouse and videoing this compound that they had created out of this barricaded compound, it comes over the radio. I'm listening to the local talk radio, and it comes over the radio while I was there that the settlement had just been awarded. Now, you'll love this, Dr. Gold. They awarded the $27 million settlement on the first day of jury selection. Now, what did John say? John said this is a statement that the government is guilty. What the city of Minneapolis did by making this award, they made a statement to the jurors, to the jury pool, that this was already settled.
Right.
This was a fait accompli from day one.
Yes.
To Officer Chauvin's trial. And that was the most. In fact, I've said it since that day. A real judge, an honest judge, a true jurist would have thrown it out right then and there.
On principle, right?
Absolutely, with extreme prejudice.
Right. It's a very good point.
Yeah, that's a really good point. That's a really good point. Somebody earlier commented in the thread about, how do you compare 5 million for Ashli and 27 million for George Floyd? You can't, you don't. It's terrible. We live in double double standards. What's that expression? If they didn't have double standards, they'd have no standards at all.
If they weren't holding double standards, they'd be empty-handed.
Right.
So,
and let's be honest, we still don't really know what the settlement amount is. It's that 5 million is a leak. And
it's a leak. That's true. But I don't want anybody to, I think why I opened with it was I didn't want anybody to let themselves get sucked into some false
saying that's a floor instead of a ceiling. Yeah.
Floor or ceiling. It's literally not. You've got the 27 million George Floyd. You've got the damages, the actual costs, the hard costs. So like, just don't let anybody drag you into that. I also want to remind everybody, which I guess we can't be reminding everybody enough. We are so aware that so many people were overcharged and labeled as violent when they weren't. When you actually go and look at the evidence, not at all. We are completely aware of that. That is going to be part of the final
categories that Ed Martin was talking about.
Yeah.
Remember you talked about categories? Yeah.
There's I feel a little bit tongue-tied because I've been some of the things that I personally have been working on for months, which is how to lay out a framework that is both able to be accomplished by the DOJ in a tight time frame, right? Because we want to get this wrapped, and yet takes into account so many different situations. I like how Steve, spelled out, like, in fact, he was the 1 or 2 or 3 people whose lives actually maybe got better. You might be the only one, actually, Steve. You might be like the only one, but in other words, the range has been huge, right? Somebody's dead, murdered, suicide, life improved, vast majority of life got terribly worse. How do you put all that together in a way, logistically, like just doing the whole cold, the heavy work of lifting that up? So I've actually been thinking about that for months. And we are sharing that with various people over, this period of time. But at no time do we ever forget that many people were mislabeled, a huge number of people mislabeled. It's another reason for the videos. I keep harping on the videos, but so many of you who were charged with violence were not violent. Like, we literally need those stories. And by the way, if you were charged with violence, that was perhaps more of a minor thing, but I know John knows somebody who actually came forward and explained it. That video too is also very helpful. When you look back on political protests, there's many, many, many examples of the government not treating its citizens like they've treated here. That's the book I just wrote, Selective Persecution. So even if you did some things that you were ashamed of, or you wouldn't do again on another day, you got caught up in something, that's worth putting a video to, because people need to understand that this day was treated different than all other days.
Let me speak to the numbers of violence perpetrators right now, because this is going to be a shock to everyone, especially when you look at the way that they massage these charges in the federal documents and the accusations and the statements of facts. If you put your hand on a fence at the wrong time, you get charged with violence. If you put your fence as a big steel framed Trump sign is passing over your head, and you do the instinctual thing and you reach up and touch it, you're charged with launching a deadly weapon against the cops, except unless your name is Ray Epps, and he did the same thing, and he was not charged with that crime, whereas people standing right next to him were charged with violence for that. What we know is that somewhere in the 300 to 400 area of actual charges of violence, aiding and abetting, just being in like I said, putting your hands in the wrong place at the wrong time. There was something on the order of 300 or 400. Matthew Graves, the U.S. attorney at the time, in a speech or a statement he gave to the press, I think it was in January of 23, he actually said that by their video evidence that only somewhere between 200 and 225 people actually did real violence. So we know that the numbers were massaged up there, but here's where it gets really shocking. We're almost ready to go on the record and say that actual violence was only perpetrated by about 60 people by the video evidence, only about 60. Now, it doesn't take a lot. Now, you've heard me say this. I rarely do a J6 podcast or interview without saying this phrase. On January 6th, I saw bad people doing bad things, good people doing good things, otherwise good people doing stupid things, getting caught up in the moment like we talked about. things that they're ashamed of. They're embarrassed that they've never done that before. But see, that's what happens when professionals are in a crowd and they create those color revolutionary type moments, and they can draw you into a crowd. I was speaking to a 3-star general, and this was a guy, you know, over special forces in his career, retired. And he told me that, you know, obviously we were having the discussion that this is what, you know, this is what we do overseas. This is what our special ops do. This is what the CIA does overseas. We create these types of January 6th situations all over the world. Yeah. Africa, the Middle East, Central America, all over the world. Asia.
Common tactic.
Yes.
Well
trained professionals that do this.
And like the FBI. That's literally what they're trained to do.
I'm in the middle of my research into the possibility that certain types of agitation weapons were used that day, directed energy weapons that are known throughout the intelligence community and the special ops community. And I'm speaking to a general who has ordered their use overseas, these exact weapons. And he admitted to me, he said, yes, he said, those do exist. I'm going to quote him, pardon my French. He said, with those weapons, we can stop your heart. We can make you shit your pants.
Literally.
And then he said, but I wouldn't need that for January 6th. All I would need are 3 or 4 of my best guys. I'm sorry, he said 4 or 5 of my best guys to make January 6th happen.
Right. And the FBI copped to at least 26 of them. So
yeah.
Steve, could I just ask one quick question? Your investigation where you kind of arrived at number 60, I've actually been searching for like an estimate. So is that's based upon your analysis and looking at all the various videotapes and evidence?
That's based on mine and many other video
analysis.
You know, sleuths who have spent thousands of hours doing this, even just for their own trials, including the attorneys that I worked with closely. That, you know, one attorney in particular that also worked on my team, who represented over 100 J6 clients. You can imagine the amount of video he's seen in discovery. He was the one that actually called me up a few months ago and challenged me and said, you know, he said, I think we have a story here. He said, I think that there was no more than 60 people who actually did violence, and this will fly in the face of the government's record.
And that, Steve, tell me if I'm correct here, but that number would only refer to those participating or engaging in it. That doesn't mean all 60 of those people initiated or are fully responsible for that.
It does not mean that they initiated. Right. They may very well have been caught up in the moment by somebody who was waving them into the battle. And I look, when you know, you guys came in on the east side, right?
Yes.
All right. I came in right when I turned my camera on the lower west terrace. Battle was fully engaged. Instantly, I captured blood. Instantly, I captured people getting aid on both sides of the police line. And by the way, when I say I saw bad people doing bad things, good people doing good things, and otherwise good people doing stupid stuff, that applies on both sides of the police line.
Right.
Let's be very clear about that.
Yeah.
All right. And the thing that I captured immediately on my camera was warfare. You know, good old, you know, sticks and stones and bats and clubs and pieces of fences. And, you know, fortunately, thank God, no firearms.
Right.
And that's what they wanted that day. They wanted a couple of good old MAGA bubbas from down south to show up from Alabama and pull those weapons, pop off at a couple of Capitol police officers. And then that was it. The Second Amendment is over.
Yeah.
They didn't get that. So they went after the First Amendment. We were blessed that day that did not happen.
That's true. It's true. But it's only that much more important that, and then this is why I'm so fierce about this, you guys. This is why I will not let this go. But we cannot stop until we have scratched and clawed our way to the bottom of every deep, dark secret that happened to allow for a government to weaponize itself to create a color revolution riot, and then exploit it to the level that they did. I mean, we've talked at length about the judicial and legal desecration, but just the tactical reality of what happened on the ground that day is, and that's why I went, the 60 violent people still needs to have context and a caveat that a lot of this, really all of it in general, but the majority of it, even in individual circumstances, was predicated on government malfeasance. And the government must be held to a higher standard than any individual citizen, because the individual citizen doesn't have power. Like that, we give the federal government weapons. We give them brute force. George Washington said, government is fire. You know, it will burn you to the ground. So when we allow the federal government to have weapons with the concept that they're going to hold the peace, and then they use those weapons to cause violence and harm citizens, and especially to frame them fraudulently as the bad guys when they set it up, I'm so reviled by that. So I think it's incredibly important that we chase that down until we get to the bottom.
Absolutely. And that's what we're working on. I mean, it's it's kind of around the clock for me. I do get distracted by other projects that I get put on, but as I said, look, the arc of my January 6th story has changed my life in significant ways, in that I have direct relationships now with people at the highest level of government. We just opened up an investigation a couple of months ago into what we believe is a very, very corrupt member of Congress from, unfortunately, your state of Florida.
Yeah.
Troubled to hear that. And in the process of this investigation, suddenly something began popping off in my, as I said, my particular set of skills. Something did not look right about a FBI agent who was inappropriately behaving in this mix of sources and reporters and all. And I'll get into a little bit more clarity here. I'm being veiled at the moment, but I'm trying to make a January 6th point. Is that when I began to investigate January 6th with the same skills in which I've uncovered this story about a rogue agent working apparently at the behest of a U.S. congressman and not in a sanctioned investigation by the Bureau itself, is that I could see with that same set of skills and eyeballs what the government was doing, as you've talked about, John, not only on the day of January 6th, but in the process of how they were weaponizing themselves against the Americans in ways that may not have been immediately apparent to everybody, but then ultimately were. Because it's one thing to have a SWAT team show up, 20, 25 agents, as you guys have experienced. It's one thing to have that happen, but it's just as bad or worse even to have that statement of facts full of lies written by a federal officer, and the charges then brought against you. And then everyone in the whole country now has access because it's a public record document to see what you've been accused of. And then that becomes you. That's who you are now. You're no longer you. You are now the person that an FBI agent has now characterized you as, and that's who you are now. It's on the record. Every time I Google up, Google up Ron, I find out who they say he is.
Right. And Ron, you'll talk about that, but that's such an important point, Steve. That goes back to why, Dr. Gold, we talk about this all the time, that the government must acknowledge the crime, which Ed Martin is leading them to do properly now, and the restitution, the serious, very large financial settlement that needs to happen is, of course, to make them whole, like Ed Martin said. That we just know that's right. That's just justice. It's necessary. But also, Steve, you aren't affected financially the way that others are, but all of us have been smeared, tarred and feathered, our reputation destroyed. We have just been treated wrongly. It's a lie. It's an injustice. And that is not something we can accept. The government must make restitution for that. And that applies to everyone, because it's the principle underneath it that we cannot allow a government or just our society to proceed in an unjust manner, in a dishonest and malicious manner. Right. So,
but this is where I was headed with this, is that one of the other aspects of my life changing for the better is that before January 6th, I didn't have access to high level officials, whether they're elected officials, whether they're bureaucrats, whether they're appointees to various departments. I didn't have that access at the time. I gathered all of this access because of the success of our investigations over the last 4 years and the recognition of that success. Right. And so when this new thing happened, for instance, in Florida, that's the reason I'm in Florida right now, is working on this particular story, is that once I recognized and became thoroughly convinced that I was looking at a rogue agent investigating inappropriately our sources, and maybe even us as a media company, while pretending to be investigating the alleged crimes of the congressman. This agent was out, doing this kind of thing inappropriately on many levels. And so because of what I had achieved with January 6th stories, I now had access to take this directly to the top. I was stonewalled by the Orlando resident agency of the FBI. I was stonewalled by the Tampa field office. I was stonewalled by the national intake. I live in North Carolina. I called the Charlotte field office to report a public corruption. I was, as a reporter, introducing myself as an investigative journalist with Blaze Media. I have stumbled on a likely public corruption issue, and I need to speak to a supervisory special agent at every one of these field offices, including national intake. Nobody would take my call. But because of the work I've done in the last 4 years, I had a couple of numbers in this phone right here.
Right.
One of them being a guy that is now the director of the agency. And so I dropped a couple of text messages out with enough information that within seconds I got a reply. And then we were able to start the process of getting answers about this rogue agent here operating out of Orlando. Conveniently in that particular congressman's district. And so the restorative justice, as I said, and you guys have heard me say this before, and anybody who's ever heard me do this before, I have always said that I don't need it. I don't need it. But I will do everything I can, there's no way that I will ever be able to tell all 1,600 people's stories. I can't do it. Can't do it. Some of them I don't want to tell their stories.
Right.
As I said, I saw bad people doing bad things.
Right.
And some of those bad people that even got a couple of years, they were not MAGA by any means. And so I can't tell everybody's stories. I wish I could. Thankfully, my partner in crime at the Blaze, Joe Hanneman, incredible guy, incredible journalist. He is so passionate about the individual stories, and he's told many of them, and really thankful to have him, on our team, and his heart for the J6ers is, unparalleled among journalists. And so I will, just say this, and then we can move on to something else before I have to run out of here. But sure. The most important thing that all of us need to understand right now is, even though we hope a couple of really good guys at the top of the FBI, even though we hope we have a really good gal at the top of the Office of the Department of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard.
Right.
Even though we hope that we have new and good people at the top of the CIA and other intelligence agencies and the DOD and that, those organizations, those bureaus, those agencies are
rotted to the core.
Rotten to the core.
Rotten to the core. Yeah, 100%.
And it's vast. It's not small numbers.
Yeah.
It's vast numbers.
Thousands and thousands of bureaucratic employees that suck up tens of millions of dollars, probably hundreds of millions of dollars in annual budget.
If we were to rank them, I'm by the way, I'm not pulling numbers out of my ass right now.
This is part of restorative justice, Steve. This is part, right? Victim recovery, government accountability.
If we were to look at, because I tend to classify, this is just me, and I know some of them will get offended at me for saying this, but when we talk about the highest level, the tier 1 special forces guys from the military, they work back and forth between the intelligence community. So they're, a lot of those guys are spooks. But if we're talking about, guys like Delta Force, Navy SEALs, you're talking about 85, 90% conservatives, registered Republicans, MAGA, Trump supporters. That's not true throughout all the tier 1 communities. There are some specialized units that are there more because of a very seriously and select type of skills that they have, and they tend to run more liberal. So it might be 50-50 in those units between conservatives and leftists. And then when you get into the rot of the actual real intelligence community itself, you're looking at probably, there's a thin layer, a thin number at the the older agents at the FBI that came in for the right reasons after 9/11. They're either approaching retirement, or they got in a little more than 20 years even. They're, so you got a little thin layer at the top, the older guys. And then it's rotten after that. I mean, you've got guys that are willing to do anything. They came in during the Obama administration. They came in fully engaged with the Patriot Act and its unconstitutional principles, and had no problem with it whatsoever. And then
some of them came and beat down our door.
Right. And so then you have the worst of the worst, which of course is the CIA. Fully 80% of the CIA are right now, today, this very day, working against the Trump administration in every way that they can. I would probably guess 60% of the FBI, and we're not just talking about the agents, we're talking about the analysts and the bean counters and everybody else are doing everything they can to work against the Trump administration. And so that's why you can have a situation like this with a rogue agent out there with no principles, looking after her own interests, or maybe after the interest of a friend in Congress. Some wine and cheese party she got leaned over and whispered to by a congressman, right. Corey Mills, and said to her, hey, you're a veteran, because she's a retired colonel. Her name is Shay Talley Bradley, special agent. She's actually a retired full bird colonel from the United States Army, went into the service of the Bureau during her time in the reserves. And then at some point, we don't exactly know how yet, and it's very interesting, she began to interview our sources on our investigations about Corey Mills' stolen valor allegations, about his foreign weapons sales businesses, about the fact that he has, we have 4 different sources now saying that he actually converted to Islam back in 2013, 2014, even though he maintains that he's always been Christian, even though he was married in the most notorious mosque in America in Falls Church, Virginia, right outside of DC. The imam who married him was the unindicted co-conspirator in the 1993 World Trade Center bombing. And there's no way that this particular imam would have married him had he not been an avowed Muslim, because he was marrying a Muslim in the mosque, an Iraqi woman. And then somehow, some way, within weeks or days or months after marrying this Iraqi woman, he got a $250 million grant for his international weapons trading business. How does that happen? And then suddenly, how does it happen that an agent will then, once investigations are opened into his activities, that the agent shows up and then pretends to be investigating him so that she can get access to the sources and the information that has been gathered about him so that the congressman can get in front of it. And then when Blaze got in on it, and then they brought me in, because once we started bumping up against FBI, intelligence community, CIA, DOD in this story, that's kind of my specialty. And that's why they brought me into the story. And this is where we learned about this. So why do I tell this now, other than this is a big story? And I hope that everybody goes to Blaze and theblaze.com and reads about it.
Yeah.
But the point being is that when they come knocking on your door, don't talk to them ever, 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 for any reason, under any circumstances. Do not talk to them.
And it's a shame that an American institution, like, they're supposed to be the good guys, right? They're not. They're the bad guys.
This agent showed up at one of our sources, showed up at her door by herself, by the way, and then arranged for a sit down at a Starbucks. Well, this particular source runs a website called CoreyMillsWatch.com. So she was excited that the FBI, finally, we've got your attention. Right. You're investigating a crooked congressman, right? And so she's excited. So she's just gushing forth everything she knows, everything she has. She's given them all the information about stolen valor. Then the Blaze comes in on the story. Some two or 3 months later, we start investigating. After the Blaze opens our investigation into the story, the FBI agent calls this lady back, has another Starbucks meeting with her, and then says, "Oh yeah, we're no longer investigating stolen valor. There's not enough there. But what do you know about Corey Mills' foreign business dealings?" Well, this lady's just giving it all to her, everything she knows. She's excited to be giving the FBI all of this information. And then the agent says to her, she says, "Would you be interested in becoming a paid confidential human source for us in my investigation?" The lady says, "Yeah, whatever we have to do to take this congressman down, I'm all in." And then she says, "Well, would you be willing to go undercover and investigate another lady involved in this thing?" And our source goes, "Yeah. Well, there's only one other lady that was involved in this at the time. And you know who it was?
Jill Savage.
Blaze Media's own Jill Savage, the host of The Mandate, Blaze News Tonight. That's the only other lady involved that had come in and started the investigation against Mills because she caught him in a lie." And so suddenly, can you imagine?
Yeah.
And so when again, despite the fact that we have a real story here that's worth talking about, don't talk to the FBI. Yeah. Don't trust them. Don't believe them. Yeah. You know, and do I want to believe Kash Patel and Dan Bongino that Epstein committed suicide? Okay, I want to believe them. I'm hoping that this whole trust the plan, just wait, it's coming. Just wait, it's coming. Just wait, it's coming. I hope that this is going to work out well for all of us, and I hope that they're telling the truth.
I hope they are too, but trust but verify. So I don't think patience is a virtue, but that should never be exploited like all virtues, perverted into something that's not appropriate. Patience does not mean sitting on your hands. Patience does not mean wasting time. So we all have responsibilities. We all have opportunities. And that's why we built wearej6.com, this platform to connect people to important stories, to important ideas, and to figure out what can all of us be doing, because every day counts. So, I love Kash Patel and Dan Bongino. I respect them. I support them. And I hope that they're going to do the right thing. But, they're not, that's not my job. I have a job to do, and I'm going to do it. And right now, that includes putting a lot of heat and pressure on the FBI, including on Kash and Dan Bongino. But, your story, finding these clear evidences of corruption, it has to be chased down. We have to continue bringing all of our energies to bear. And anyone watching this wanting to know, well, what can I do? Like, each one of you has a story to share. whatever your situation is, even if you're just part of the advocate community to support J6. But if you are a J6er, you have a very important story to share. So we want you to get that story made, create a video, join, the platform here, register. We want to have you share your stories. Ron, we want to hear from you about, how this has affected you, how weaponization is a real thing that has affected your life. And yeah, go ahead and share.
Well, before you turn it over to Ron, let me say goodbye to you guys. I have to.
Yes, Steve, thanks for joining us. We appreciate it.
I'm actually, believe it, my next appointment today takes me back to the very thing that you are passionate about, John. Is I told you we're going to prove that this fire was lit by government agencies and/or officials. Well, you saw our story about Aaron Black, the Pelosi fixer. Well, my next appointment today is on that topic.
Love it. All right. Well, stay tuned and we'll keep in touch.
Thank you for letting me in. Ron, sorry I bogarted all of the time here in the first hour.
No problem, Mr. Baker.
It's all on you. And you and I need to talk again, talk sometime soon.
I look forward to it, sir. A lot going on.
Thanks, guys. I got to get out of here.
God bless you. Thank you, Steve. Yeah, Ron. So the audience may not know, but myself, I was incarcerated initially in Florida, where I live here in Naples now, but I was transferred after a horrific period of isolation abuse after Congressman Matt Gaetz bravely fought on my behalf and put enough pressure on the BOP to get me transferred. And then I was dumped in the middle of nowhere in Oakdale, Louisiana. And the next thing I know, I run into this guy, Ron.
Yeah. I'm all, who's that guy walking by so fast? He's on a mission.
Exactly. So I talk about this in the book that I wrote, but you should explain what you mean by that. Like prison drives me crazy for so many different reasons, but one of them is that there's just a melees. Most people there are just spiritually rotting and physically not much different. So I was like, just get me from A to B as quick as I can go and try to get something productive done.
Yeah. And then somebody pointed out, that's John Strand, man, you got to meet that guy. And I go, what? And you were just gone, man. So I hunted you down the chow hall. So,
I stopped even going to the chow hall because it was so terrible. But
oh yeah, I lived on mackerel pouches and protein powder in the cell.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm happy to be on here, everybody. And I'm sorry I missed a couple weeks. It's been rough. But
yeah, tell us about it.
Well, ever since the beginning, we all go through this, and everybody listening and listening in the future, we're all affected by this in our own ways. We have different level of no-knocks. We have different level of this. We have different, pretrial release, pretrial detentions. It's all terrible. But the lingering effect is, yeah, we're pardoned, right? But the social media, the Google, I was just with a customer the other day, and we were talking about childhood actors. And I go, wow, when I was in California, I was a childhood actor. I was in Fantasy Island and Incredible Hulk. I started going off on all these. She goes, oh, let me Google you. Let's see if you have IMDb or whatever. And I go, no.
Yeah, don't Google me.
Luckily, she looks up at me and she goes, is that you? I go, depends what website you're on. And she goes, this is you. And I go, it is. And she goes, I think this is pretty cool. I got lucky on that one, but it's that fear, I tried to apply for another job in my old industry. They wouldn't even touch me because of that first blush of my history, search. When I moved here to Texas, I had a job lined up, conservative, Christian, long, family-owned business in Texas, and I had great interviews. I was dialed in. And then driving out here in that big old truck in West Texas, I call them up, say, I'll be there Thursday. I want to come in Monday once I unload. And there was no job available.
Wow.
Well, and I let it go for 2 years. And you know what I did? I walked in that place last month, and I walked right into the general manager's office, and I go, I just want to introduce myself. I'm Ron Mealy. And he got caught off guard, and told him who I was. And he goes, I got to be honest with you. I don't know why that went down, but I remember your story, and I'm sorry. Sorry doesn't cut it.
No.
when you lose 80% of your income, you're scrambling in California, making minimum wage just to, change dirty filters in AC units on rooftops of schools, and it's 100 degrees outside. But yeah, the lingering effect is there. I mean, I love being pardoned. I love being out. I love being with my wife and having a pillow, John. Remember, the first time you laid on your head on a pillow?
Dude.
The best thing in the world was when
people don't realize.
Yeah, on the 20th, when we got out in January, I ran to my wife's arms. My video's on my X account.
Oh,
we got snowed in Beaumont. We're at a Marriott or a Fairfield Inn for a day and a half, 2 days. Post-release, coming back home.
Right.
It was the best transitional period you can have. Just having conversations again, not being rushed off the phone. 1 minute remaining. This call is being monitored. And people standing next to you, burping, spitting on the floor. You remember how it was, and you were in A2 or
R2.
R2 Rapids.
Yeah,
it's a good feeling to be out, and now we gotta do something about it.
We sure do. Sure do. Ron, your video was incredible. Thank you for doing that. I know it was, emotionally difficult and everything. But it's been so powerful. And I hope people listening and watching will remember how important it is for everyone to do that, for everyone to get involved, to link arms. That's what wearej6.com is here to help you do, support and encourage people. But every one of you guys, and I know a lot of people watching who are J6ers know other J6ers, right? So it's really important that you do everything that you can in your own life, in your own sphere, to reach out on DMs or phone calls or however you connect with people and let them know we're here for you. And we all have a part to play in making this right and lifting each other back up. Because a lot of us have been beaten down really, really hard. I mean, obviously, Ron, you have, and you can speak to that. But there's such an opportunity for us to lift each other up. And that's what we're trying to do here.
And I was with about 20 of them. Oh, I'm sorry, Dr. Gold.
I just, if you can just tell people how they can find you. I know a lot of people can want to maybe stay in touch and maybe DM you on X.
Sure. Yeah, it's Ron Mealy. My name on the screen here, Jan 6. Be the best way.
Yeah, X is great. At Ron Mealy, JAN 6.
Got it.
Yes, sir. Yeah, that's the way to get a hold of me there.
And for anyone tracking socials, you can find We Are J6 on X. Actually, there's a picture of a screenshot on the screen there. And one of the most recent posts is the live stream update, and that has Ron's handle attached there as well. So just a reminder that people continue to, share and help promote the We Are J6 content.
Ron, your video was incredibly powerful when, we were all watching it together. And then I know it's just so many people have seen it online. I wanted to know, because I want everyone to do videos, because I know what a difference it's going to make at the moment that we need them in the negotiation. But what has it meant to you kind of personally to be able to have like an effective or an empathetic, like your story being told and being listened to?
Being captured, like memorialized, right?
Yeah.
I just started speaking and she just kept recording, and it really does help to get it out there, because others are going to see it and they're going to go, that's my story, or I went through this, but you didn't go through that. I gotta tell my story, So I encourage everybody just to, write down your 5 bullet points and just do a quick 30-second, video on that first bullet point, stop down and then do the second bullet point. So you don't have to, and people get nervous when they're talking in front of their own camera,
Right.
Not me, childhood actor and all. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. But we have an outline that made it easier, right?
No, I just like talking,
You just rambled.
Yeah. So I get in trouble, sometimes talking too much, but
no, you did a great job.
I say definitely do the videos, because it means a lot just to have that, and it's done, and it's forever, and your story will be told. Someone's going to see it. My grandkids are going to watch this video someday.
That's right. No, Dr. Gold and I talk all the time about, really being serious about working with the administration and working on the government angle of doing what needs to be done to acknowledge this, for the government to apologize, and for our society to recognize what happened and to memorialize it in an appropriate way, which I think needs to include a record of all of these video stories and the full depth of what's happening.
There are a lot of bad events that have happened throughout history, and then people do these video memorials, or in the past they did writing testimonials, and they change everything. They change people's understanding of the event. I was recently in Washington, D.C. There's a new museum, which I recommend everyone go to. It's called Victims of Communism. It's an unbelievable museum.
It is.
Amazing. But one of the things they did so effectively, you saw different things, but they had videos of people who had been through, and just there's one specific role that they did. One guy, there was one who was a daughter of a freedom fighter, and she spoke up, and then the choices she had to make. But the commonality is they would have these videos of real people. There's no substitute for it. There will come a day, I hope, that these videos are put together in an aggregate, and it's displayed in an official repository of the federal government. And in your own personal life, you will be so grateful to have something that you can point to 1 year, 5 years, and 10 and 30 years from now that is proof of what you went through. Some of the harm that people are suffering, some of the mental anguish people are suffering, is because you're alone and you know that people don't understand what you went through. Well, give them a chance to understand. There's a lot of haters out there, but there's a lot of people who just don't know. And there's even people on your side who don't understand the scope of what you went through.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember the first time I heard Matthew Perna's story, I was blown away.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm grateful that Jerry has the heart and energy to tell the story.
Yeah.
That's what these videos can do. And it doesn't have to be as absolutely life-ending tragic that Matt went through. It's whatever you went through is something that other people need to hear. 2, it's going to change, as a practical matter, what's coming downstream in negotiations. And 3, it's going to forever memorialize what happened to you in your life. It's a way of taking power back. And we have dedicated time and resources to making your, quote, amateur video really look good.
Yeah,
So
you do. You did.
It's an opportunity for everybody, just for your own selfish reasons.
And a big part of the result of that video, I got to be honest, a lot of people saw that video. There's a lot of impressions. I mean, 300,000.
Hundreds of thousands. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it'll keep growing. So.
And you can imagine the comments that go along with it. And I'm not a social media person that has thousands of followers, and I get thousands of comments every week or so. I was overwhelmed by the amount of supportive comments that people left, with the love out there and just the feeling God's presence speaking through these people to help calm the nerves, whatever I might have been going through at that moment. And then if I skim across one that's, I'm not going to name a certain lady's name. It starts with a P and ends in an M. I don't even read those. And when I do, I just laugh. We have all the same faces, and I just skim right past them. And then I go back to the people, and there's hundreds of positive. So it really helps. If you do your video, you're going to get a lot of love out there, and just skim through the hate and know that we're living in an evil world. It's spiraling out of control all around us, and you just got to fixate your eyes on God and just stare at the Lord.
Amen.
And if his eyes are on it, why should our eyes be on it? You know what I mean? He's got everything. He's in control, and he gives you the peace and the grace to endure all this persecution. Yep. Mercy is a different thing. Mercy is, from my youth, and I needed his mercies, but his grace has got us through those. In the shoe in Oklahoma, for 6 days with a murderer just coming down from the pen into a medium, and he's my cellie in the shoe, sitting on the bus for 5 hours, having to go to the bathroom, then going on a plane, can't go into the bathroom. You remember the Con Air. Con Air was terrible.
It's bad.
So those dark moments when you have all that time, I just want to remind everybody, just seek God. It's the only way you can get through it.
Amen. It's definitely the only way I got through it.
Yes, sir.
And yeah, it just reminded me again what we fight for and what we have to live for. And man, it was so rough, Ron, it was so rough and it was so dark.
Yeah.
But I always believed that God was greater and that he had a plan. And I mean, we went to the Supreme Court and had an incredible victory. Then we got Trump elected. Then we got the full blanket pardons to recognize that this was total constitutional travesty and get everyone out. And so, the work's not done, and we're here because we're continuing to engage and put the work in.
Yes,
but God has been so good and so faithful already. It's really just astonishing, honestly. And now I'm on a live stream with Ron, my former prison mate. Like, that's just crazy. I can't predict that, but wow, that's cool.
I planted a lot of seeds in Jokedale. I planted a lot of seeds there with these young men, trying to mentor them, and to seek God. And, I may not be the one to water it. It might take a chomo or a drug dealer to water them, but I planted a lot of seeds out there, not just, spiritually, but in horticulture.
Absolutely.
So, anyway.
Absolutely. Well, that's amazing. Thank you so much, Ron, for joining us today. Again, thank you for doing that video. It was massively important and it was so powerful. Like Dr. Gold was saying, there is no substitute for your own personal testimony. The book of Revelations in the Bible says that they overcame him being the deceiver, the devil, but that the saints overcame the devil by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony. I mean, it's that powerful. So these persecution testimonials, it's your story, you guys who went through it. If you're a family member or just an advocate, please find a J6er to encourage and support and help them to create these videos and tell their stories and participate. But the battle does continue. And so we will continue fighting each and every day. Please continue to share wearej6.com. The website, of course, is the easy starting point to register, get involved, help share your stories and so forth. And of course, you can find us on social media and everything as well. And the next live stream we will do hasn't yet been determined the exact date. We will keep everyone posted as to whether or not we'll be here back next Saturday. But a Saturday coming soon, we will return. And of course, keep you posted on legal updates as well. But right now, really, the big priority is to continue getting these videos created and submitted from the community of J6ers, and also just to continue supporting each other, building each other up, reaching out and building those bridges. So we just, again, encourage everyone to register at wearej6.com to help us do that and to help yourselves do that. And then just continue to pray, seek God, and be of good cheer. Be strong and courageous. God calls us to that many, many times. Be very strong and courageous. So that is God's call. It's good and it's true, and we can do it together. And we're just really proud and grateful of all of you guys. So, perfect. Ron, thank you for your time, brother. Dr. Gold, thank you for your time and your wisdom and the hard work that you're doing on the legal. It's invaluable, and we appreciate that. And to the whole team, we give our love and support to Brandon Struck and Derek Evans. We'll, I'm sure, get them back here fairly soon and can give you some further updates as well. But the battle continues, and we will all see everybody soon. And may God bless you and your families, and may God continue to bless the United States of America. We'll see you soon.